First of all, welcome, and thank you everyone for your time. On this webinar, I'm going to teach you how to define what automations and tools you should prioritize building, what we got wrong in the beginning, and how you can start this week. So 2 quick notes before we dive in. First, please hold your questions. We're going to do a full Q&A at the end, so jot them down as we go so you don't forget them. And second, in case we haven't met as of yet, Remote Leverage is an international recruiting company. We mostly help US companies hire and build world-class remote teams. This is without the overhead and headache of doing it themselves. So if hiring is a bottleneck for you, message us, as we'd love to help out. Quick background check on me, so you guys know why to listen. My name is Karim Ghanem. I'm the Director of Technology at Remote Leverage. Have been for about 6 months now. I helped grow the business from $150,000 when we began to $1.5 million a month. This was achieved by having great flows, a good product, but a lot of the backbone comes from tech. So automations, systems, and processes that go with these. Everything I'm sharing today comes from stuff we actually run. So this isn't just theory. Now, before the how, we got to check the receipts. Today, we run around 200,000 automated tasks every month across dozens of live workflows, and AI is deeply integrated. But here's the part that matters. We didn't start at 200,000. We actually started with one flow. And I'm going to make this one flow the key point while we're going through all the different points to use it as an example. So maybe this relates to a lot of the business owners that are in the chat, and you guys can get started with maybe a similar flow. By the end of the session, you should know how to start and how to identify which flow is the correct one for you. So if you remember one thing from this whole webinar, make it this. We need to start with a problem, not a solution. The solution is going to be the last decision we make. It should never be the first. And every lesson coming up actually hangs off of this one idea. Key points we're going to tackle. Number 1 is the build first list. The second one is the right problem test. We're going to test urgency. Number 3 are build traps we ran into, and I'm going to go into each one of these so you guys can avoid them. Number 4 is going to be the starter stack, so kind of what tools you would need to get started, and I think it's much slimmer than most people believe. And number 5 will be the headcount question. Will implementing all of these tools and AI affect my headcount in a negative way? Then we're going to talk on how we're going to start from Monday morning, and again, I'll be using our own builds and mistakes that we've made in the past as examples the whole way through. So lesson 1, the build first list. Before we automate anything, we need to know what actually belongs on the list. Most teams automate the wrong thing first, and they end up burning all of the early momentum because they're spending time on things that shouldn't have been built in the first place. So not everything deserves to be automated. I think we need to make that point clear. Not everything deserves to be automated. Not everything should be made into a tool. Not everything needs an AI augmentation. What we use internally are 3 simple filters to decide what needs to be built. 1, does it run constantly? So we're aiming for daily or hourly. We're not aiming for things that happen once a quarter. The gains on that would be minimal. Number 2, does it affect money or time directly? So we're talking about direct hit to the bottom line, to revenue, to payroll maybe, or the most common one, to hours, work hours. And number 3, is this repeatable enough to actually hand off? So does it have the same steps every single time we take this action? If it doesn't have all 3 of these, then the answer is it can wait. Because there's most likely going to be other issues that do tackle all 3 of these. So here we can see some common issues. And before we go into a real case, here's a wide range of what build first automations look like. Some are small, right? Some are bigger. So a small would be the lead logged and assigned in seconds. So when a lead comes in, we want to assign it as quickly as possible. Or a booking that confirms itself, right? Maybe registers itself in your CRM. Others are whole workflows, like a client's full onboarding kickoff, right? A deal closing straight through the books, a recruitment pipeline screening and routing candidates, or month-end reporting that builds and sounds itself. Size isn't the point. If it's constant, costly, and repeatable, it earns a spot on this list. And I mentioned these points specifically because these can apply to any company. So let's look at the real case scenario I mentioned. And we solve this in the form of an automation. Meet the sales flow, right? Uh, it kicks off the second a prospect books a call on our calendar. So what's the first thing that happens? Someone found us via marketing, most likely, and they booked with us. From there, they qualify as a lead. They need to be added to the CRM. We need to send confirmations and reminders. We need to create customer and billing, and we need to log everything. All of this we've achieved to make this automatic. No one ever touches anything. It's all done in the back end. We'll run each of our key points that we just mentioned on one of the previous slides against this one flow, and we'll see if it fits the criteria for something that we would want to build first. Test one. Does it run constantly? So do people book meetings with our sales reps constantly? The answer for that would be yes. It's pretty obvious. It fires on every single booked call. The second a prospect picks a time, the whole thing starts running. So day or night, doesn't matter. Weekend or holiday, doesn't matter. This is running 24/7 without need for human intervention, which is another of the huge increase in productivity gains. Nobody has to be at a desk. So the first box, I'd say, can be ticked off. Let's do test number 2. This one's a bit more interesting. Does it cost real time and money? Every book call used to be about half an hour of hands-on work. That goes from qualifying the lead, cleaning up the CRM or updating the CRM, confirming by chat, email, or SMS, whichever our communication portal was, setting reminders, creating the customer and billing so that when we build, they would match up to their CRM account. On average, that used to take about 32 minutes just for one call, if we wanted to do it in what we defined as a correct manner. That's selling time. Your closers don't get back, and revenue, you're going to stop leaking. So I think we can say the second box is ticked off. It does indeed save us cost. Now test 3. Is it repeatable? Remember that this has to be a process that looks the same every single time. So the sales flow runs the same path every single time. It qualifies, then it needs to sync, then it needs to confirm, bill, track. 50 plus steps that never change from one call to the next. No judgment calls, no subjectiveness, no opinions. And that sameness is exactly what makes it safe to actually hand off to the machine to make it a tool or to build an automation. So I think we could successfully say that the third box was also ticked off. Let's put it together. It runs constantly, every booked call. It costs time and money, about 32 minutes each, and it's fully repeatable. So the same steps happen every single time. It checks every single box, which is exactly why the sales flow was one of our very first builds. When something passes all 3, you don't overthink it. This needs to go on the build list. And this applied to other flows as well. We had multiple departments that were essentially doing things within operations. And so we had the marketing department that has their own flow. That could be optimized. That can be made a tool. That could be automated. Then we had the sales reps, which would go through a process. Then we had another department called the hiring managers, which would be handed off to clients. And they had their own process, and it was always the same. And then we have a different department called the recruitment team, who would essentially match the candidates. And so each of these departments has defined workflows that we could essentially automate or make into a tool. Lesson number 2, the right problem test. So we've got a list of what to build. Now we need to figure out which problem actually deserves to go first, instead of just chasing whatever's loudest this week. So how do you spot the urgent one? It comes down to 3 signs for the most part. What's bleeding right now? So the thing actively costing you money or customers. What's blocking everything else? So the bottleneck holding up the rest of the work. And what pays back fastest? So score high on those, and it jumps to the front of the line. Urgency has been defined. Now let's take them one at a time with our previous example of the sales flow. And let's see if these apply and if our task is actually urgent and if we should build it out or not. Sign 1. What's bleeding right now? For us, it was cold leads. Every book call we didn't follow up on was money walking out the door. And this is essentially happening every day. That's active pain, not someday pain. And it needs to be addressed immediately. And these issues can be found all around the company. Sign number 2 that it needs to be automated or made into a tool. What's blocking everything else? So in business, there tends to be lots of natural funnels. For example, the most common one is the sales funnel. At the top, you have leads coming in, and as they're going down the funnel, these leads start to dissipate and it starts to get thinner, just like a funnel, right? The people that actually close will actually be a much smaller number than the people that booked or that became a marketing lead, for example. So the sales flow sits at the top of the funnel. Every deal after it was waiting on manual follow-up. And so until these are done, nothing below this can progress. So if we want to think of it this way, it would be opportune to work on a marketing task or on a sales task before, in our case, us matching candidates to a client, because if we can't even get the clients in through the door quick enough, then it's irrelevant. So we clear that one bottleneck and the whole pipeline speeds up. Sign number 3. What pays back fastest? Because the sales flow runs on every single booking, the time it saves adds up immediately. And that's what makes it urgent. So what is happening in real time, not what is a nice to have. What are our issues right now, not how can I improve a process that doesn't even have an issue. So again, I think we can declare that the sales flow checks every single box. And so not only is it on the build first list, but it's actually urgent on the build first list. Number 3, build traps. And we had a lot of issues when we started building out this specific solution. So we've now defined what's worth building and which ones are most urgent. This is a section I wish someone honestly would have handed to me years ago. And here we're going to explore common mistakes that quietly kill first builds. And so common traps sink first builds. And we'll walk through one example of each. These are 3 of the biggest issues we had when we started building out tools and automations and building out essentially the backbone of the company. Overscoping, so trying to build everything on day 1 instead of shipping the core and adding to it. On my team, I call this over-engineering. Band-aid builds, patching a symptom instead of tracing the actual issue. And the copy-paste sprawl, and one of the most painful ones, duplicating a whole flow every time instead of building one that takes inputs. And I'm going to explain right now a situation we had for each of these with the actual sales flow and how each one played out for us. So trap 1 was overscoping. The fix is to ship the core first and add the rest only when the real need actually shows up. So don't overbuild, which is exactly how the sales flow grew. Version 1 was actually roughly 15 steps. It started with someone booking a calendar invite. They wanted to meet with us. And then this needed to be created on our CRM. That was one of the steps. And on our CRM, we have multiple entities that we wanted on there. So we create a job, we create a deal, and we create a contact, and we create their company. This is all done automatically because this took a lot of time and there was no need for this to be manual labor. Then we updated the contact within the CRM as well. So this person used to be someone that was not interested, and now he needs to go to a specific stage. So now this person is interested in this case specifically. We needed to send an email. How do we do that? We specifically used Gmail. We needed to send an SMS message. We used a platform for that. Not only that, we needed to send emails afterwards because we didn't just want to send emails now. We want to send emails the day before the meeting happens because that improves show-up rate. And there was lots of issues like this. And so what did we add afterwards, after we added the body? And why did we add these things afterwards? Because needs started popping up. And so one of the first things we added were CRM updates. Our CRM expanded the data we had. We started actually pulling in data to make dashboards and to make reports and to do all this kind of stuff. And so the data needed to grow. And as the data grew, we actually needed to add new fields and new things into our CRM. And what am I talking about? So did a lead come from Facebook or did they come from Google Ads? That's relevant. We can add that to the CRM and we can make the tool automatically add that into the profile of the person, right? And now we have this data so that we can actually create reports that will give us information to take better decisions tomorrow. And marketing is just one example of this, right? What type of package is the person interested in? Where is the person from, right? How many people work for this specific company that this person is from? All of those are data fields that we now map and they automatically go into the system. No one has to go in, no one has to make a change, no one has to touch the CRM, which causes another issue because when people are updating these platforms, you are prone to human error. Machines don't mess up unless you set up the automation incorrectly. Then still, it wasn't the machine that messed up, it was actually the creator that messed up. So second one was branching. Branching is a case where you'll have different situations. So for the sales flow, we had new clients, but we also had repeat clients. And we also had people that rescheduled, right? And so these are different scenarios. If someone rescheduled, I don't want to send them a bunch of emails again in another SMS saying, hello, this is Karim, I'm excited to meet with you. That would be a disaster. And so branching logic exists to say if this person is new, and how do I know if this person is new? Because I don't have them recorded into my CRM, right? It's simple. There's always a way to define these. If this person has rescheduled, how do I know that? Because I already have a meeting link for that person, most likely on the CRM, maybe on Calendly, or on any platform that is used. And if they're a repeat client, maybe they should get a different message. Maybe the message should be warmer because the relationship that we have with the specific person is not the same as it is with a new person. And so automations allow us to do this in seconds and automatically and without putting thought into this. The third one was AI check, and that one kind of flows in with offline conversion tracking. And so we had a real life issue. This is interesting because I think this will happen to a lot of companies at some point. We have a website, and we have a website booking form, and we started getting hit by bots. And now, what is a bot? A bot is some form of code that is made to go into your website and to book or to do any of these actions. Sometimes malicious, sometimes not malicious. So Google or Meta or all these companies run bots as well, but those aren't malicious. They're not taking any actions that would affect you. And so what happened? We ended up having a couple of weeks where we were fully booked with fake meetings. This was a disaster. And so we had to add another fix to this. We added a check, an AI check, and also an automation check. So before we even received the email of a person or the company, all this kind of stuff, we would check, does this email exist? Does this phone number exist? Now, the capability for something like that is limited. You can't ask it to verify, does this name exist? Because names vary all around the world, and there is no straightforward tool that can do this. And so that's where AI came in. You can ask AI, does this name look real? And AI can look around and you could say most of our clients are from this part of the world or maybe this part of the world. So these are how the names are normally structured. And if they're from Latin America, maybe they use the N with the squiggle on top. Or if they're from an African country, they'll have differently structured names. But we can tell AI via a prompt and we can get the best results possible for our situation. And then the offline conversion tracking, what was happening was even bigger than this. Since we started getting bots and they were converting, Meta decided that these were the people that had the highest conversion because they were coming from our ads. And what happened there, we actually started getting completely flooded with bots. And now our algorithm was messed up because Facebook thought that we liked these people because they were converting, because they were giving us numbers, but the data was skewed because these weren't real customers. And we had an interesting solution for that as well. When you're on these platforms, there's something called conversion. So did someone convert? Did someone go through the ad and maybe fill out the information or take a specific action? And we turned off conversions for these websites and we switched to something called offline conversion. Offline conversion is something I can plug into a tool or plug into an automation. And essentially, it's either a line of code or a specific line you can just copy and paste. And it tells the person, okay, this person is a lead or this person is not a lead. And we use this for multiple ways because we define qualified leads. We have an internal definition for this, and I believe every company should have this. What is a good lead? What does a good lead look like? And now we put it onto the automation at the end of the automation, and if the person went through the exact path, so they're a new client, because if they're rescheduled, we shouldn't count them as a lead, right? They need to go to this path, and then if they follow this rule, and they make it down to this perfect path, this was a qualified lead. We fixed the issue of the bot attacks, and it never returned because we did a thorough job at it. And so these modules will start appearing as needs appear. And every single situation I named that we added was also something that was high urgency. None of these changes came because one day we woke up and we said, hey, it'd be cool if we could do this. We shipped them because there was a real world need and we implemented a solution for it. Build trap number 2. And this is what I call band-aid fixes. So when something breaks, it's tempting to patch whatever is right in front of you. But that's normally just a symptom of something bigger, and this is something very important to understand. So for us, at some point, we started building separate automations that could have been completely connected or separate tools that didn't make sense to have them completely separated for each new rep. And so we split off from the base flow. So we now had one tool and two tools, and they do things that are very similar. And now the maintenance is much worse because when you create one tool and the second tool, you're not just making the new steps, the steps that you want to change, you're actually also adding steps that need to be duplicated from the first tool. Why? Because they need to start after a specific action. So if you're making a tool, maybe with code, you would have to put a button, and so you'd have to make 2 little pages with 2 little buttons. That's duplicated code. In an automation, automations work off of what's called a trigger. Triggers are actions that happen that make an automation start. And so you're essentially duplicating workload that can go into one place. An example of this in the real world is seeing that your revenue is down and you know that everyone is fully booked on your sales team and there's no more capacity, and deciding to add a discount. That does not solve the issue whatsoever. You tried to tackle a symptom, you did not try to tackle the actual issue. The correct solution for this would have been to add capacity. So before we automate a fix now, we trace it back to the root cause and we try to tackle that specifically. We never attack symptoms, and we like to take our time and investigate before we take any action. The third trap, we hit this one and we hit it hard. Early on, we spun up a whole separate copy of the sales flow per sales rep. So instead of having one automation for every sales rep and then every person that books goes through that one automation, we actually had a different calendar link for every single sales rep. And each sales rep not only had their own calendar, but they had their own automation. Now, this means that if I want to make an update to this automation, what's going to happen? I now have to make the change on the 10 different flows. So we created an issue that scaled massively. And back in the day, we used to have maybe 10 sales reps. But now the number we're at, just updating every single one of those flows would take about 30 minutes. And if it was something complex, it could take multiple hours. Why? Because we put ourselves into a corner. Do not create specific solutions, create general solutions. It was a nightmare. So version 2, we centralized the platform. And what I mean by that, instead of having one for each sales rep, we had one sales flow. And there was an issue here, because if we only have one flow sending out all the emails and all the SMS messages, the first thing we thought was, how are we going to make it personalized? We need each email or each SMS to actually be sent from the correct user. I want the sales rep to send the email or the SMS. And so there's a solution for everything. Sometimes we just have to get a bit creative. For each platform, it's going to be a bit different. But how did we solve it? For email, there's a function called send as. It's a super simple setting, but I can go into my Gmail account, for example, Karim@remoteleverage.com, and I can turn on send as, and I can give access to another account to send emails as if it were me, right? I can send it from, let's say, clients@remoteleverage.com, and then clients will be able to send emails as if it's Karim. So that was one of the issues solved. We can now send emails that look like they're coming from the correct person from any single person in the company with send as. Now, for SMS messaging, it was different. SMS messaging, our platform didn't have any feature like this or anything similar to this. And so how do we solve it? We solve this one by using phone number IDs. So each person or each phone number actually has a specific ID. And by using the ID and mapping it, what we did is we just kind of put it on an Excel sheet, and then the automation would look for the person and look for their ID. We could now send these messages from the correct phone number. So the point of this is, it doesn't matter what platforms you use, there's always a solution. Sometimes we just have to get creative. It's one flow, has the same personal touch as before, and essentially has a fraction of the upkeep. Why? Because we centralize it into one, we reduce all of the copies, all of the duplicates, and now it's much more efficient. So, lesson 4, the starter stack. People think you need a data team and a 6-month project. The truth is you don't, and I'm going to give you basically what you'd need to begin to start all of this. And there's essentially 4 layers. That's all you need to start. You need a spine, which is going to connect everything for us. And this is where we're going to build the tool or the automation or whatever we're trying to build. And so in our case, we're talking about automations. So I'm going to name Zapier and N8N. Personally, we've used both of them. We've had good results with both of them, but they're used for different things, and I'll explain that in a bit. Secondly, we need a system of record. So we need a CRM. We need a single source of truth. We need a place where all of this data is going, because if we don't have a place to track that, it's going to be very difficult to build robust tools or automations or solutions in general. So I know a lot of companies, when they start off, they start tracking with Excel sheets. We can build automations off of Excel sheets. Now, the one issue there would be at some point we would want to transition. Why? Because these solutions don't scale well. I'm sure everyone's been there. They have an Excel sheet that they use to track everything in their company, what they're selling, how much they made, how much the product cost, how much I want to make in margin. And then at some point you just have 16 different tabs and it's just a nightmare to upkeep. So Excel is not a long-term solution. Next thing we need is communications. So where do we want to send chat messages? Maybe WhatsApp, maybe we want to use Slack, emails, right, from any of the providers, or SMS messages. However, we'd like to reach people, but we need a method to reach out to people. And lastly, intelligence. So in AI, that makes judgment calls with a simple if-then rule, um, so that it can actually make judgment calls. That is very important. We always have to give AI a specific rule. If we can't define the rule, then AI will not do a good job at this. So what we'd want to do, it's as simple as picking one tool per layer, and we can stand this up as quickly as possible. So in our case, we chose Zapier. Then we chose our CRM. We used Gmail. And for intelligence, at this point, we had good results with ChatGPT. So we started about a year ago. There wasn't as much competition as there in the market, but we used ChatGPT 4.0 mini, and I'll kind of explain why we went to that in a sec. So the intelligence layer doesn't mean the biggest, it doesn't mean the fanciest model. We don't want the most expensive Claude model or the most expensive ChatGPT model or the new frontier Asian models. It's not what we're aiming for. Picking the right one actually comes down to three things. Number one is what the task actually is, right? How much capability it really needs would be number two. And number three, which a lot of people don't understand deeply, is what is the token cost? Because at volume, token costs can add up very quickly, and a decision on the wrong model could cost a lot of money very quickly. So the secret, or what you'll learn from experience, is that most automation jobs are actually very simple. We do not need to use the newest Claude model or Gemini model or any of these models. Like I said, we've had great success with ChatGPT 4.0 mini. And now the question would be, how is that even possible? How can you guys be using a model that is now very outdated and be having good results? Because the tasks we're asking to AI, we have to understand, are actually very simple. For example, we mentioned that we were trying to identify if names looked real. That's a very simple prompt for an AI. Hey, does this name look real? We have clients in these countries, and you should watch out for these specific things. You can check an email or a phone number with the tool, but you can't really tell if a name on a form is real. That little judgment call is exactly what a lightweight model is great at. Another use case for AI, we have a job description generator. And so we built this because we were posting so many jobs everywhere, job posts, and we just wanted everything to be normalized. This was taking up so much time for someone to go in and revise this. And at the time, we were a smaller team. We didn't have anyone working on this specifically. And so it was a pain to have one person essentially have to revise this, and every single time there were small issues, and every single time the tonality wasn't there, and different people talk differently and think differently. And so what we did is we created a job description generator. This was actually one of the, I think, if not the first tool we ever made. And what you do on there is you go and you say, I want someone specifically for this field. So let's say we want it for the marketing field, and we want specifically someone that does design. So we're looking for a designer to work in a marketing company or agency. And then we're going to add the tasks that the person does. We don't need to describe it. We just add tasks. The person is going to be responsible for designing our content for our Facebook platform. And so we just give it that information. And now the AI knows exactly how we like to talk because we told it, knows exactly how long the message should be, knows exactly how we think, and has an example of how a correct job description should look based on our needs. You don't need a big AI model to do that. You don't need to have top capacity. So whenever we're defining which model we want to use, we have to be very aware of this. We had a situation as of recently where we have multiple tools inside of the company, and specifically our most used tool, we were trying different things out. And we switched to a higher end model. It wasn't top of the line because, again, the task that AI normally performs within the tools is never something complex, or most of the time not complex, not for basic business needs. And we went up by one model. Going up by one model on our most used tool actually cost us twice as much on a daily basis. So let's just make up a number. Let's say we used to waste $200. That means every single day now we're wasting $400. Now, the cost, how much you're going to spend, is one defined by the model and the token cost, capability, all this kind of stuff, but it's also defined by usage. So the more time you use this, the more it's going to cost. And if you use this multiple times, it's going to cost you much more. Now, what do I mean? We have some tools and some automations that actually have multiple prompts involved. And so we're going to put a candidate in through the pipeline, for example, and then we're going to measure them specifically for their resume, for example. And that is one prompt that manages resumes perfectly. And then we're going to measure based on a different parameter, which is completely unrelated to resumes. And so now we have a second check. And now we're calling the AI twice, not just one time. And so this has also essentially duplicated the cost. So it matters a lot how we have all of this set up. One question which I get all the time is which platform, if I have no idea what I'm doing, should I start on? So I would recommend automation platforms. Automation platforms nowadays are defined as no code because you don't need to know any code. And if you have ChatGPT by your side, or if you have Claude by your side, it's very easy to start setting up these workflows today. As an example, the owner of the company at Remote Leverage, before I even joined, was already setting up workflows. He is not someone that has studied tech. He did not study software. He studied nothing related to this. And he was able to set up some of the infrastructure for the company before I even joined. When I joined, I was impressed. I think times have changed. It's not back in the day where you needed to have all of these courses and certifications and had to have specific knowledge. Now anyone can do it at any time. The skill gap has been completely removed, and it's widely available to everyone. So honestly, out of these three platforms, which are the most used automation platforms, there is no universal winner, in my opinion. It really does come down to your team and to the volume of automations that you will be working with. We started on Zapier because it's the fastest to get going, and the integration library is unmatched. And what I mean by that, all of these platforms have connections directly to other platforms. So if I were to hop on Zapier right now, I could pull up a step and it connects directly to Facebook, or it connects directly to HubSpot, or it connects directly to Calendly. Why? Because Zapier already has all of these integrations on the back end. And all you would have to do is select whenever someone opens this specific meeting in Calendly, right? Or this specific date or something. Whenever on HubSpot a contact is created, whenever this specific action happens, you don't have to know code. You don't have to know anything that is anything lower level. So as we scaled, we moved to N8N. Now, why did we do this? N8N is better for control, and it's more predictable in cost-wise at high volumes. Make kind of sits in between. It's a strong visual builder. So if you're a visual learner, maybe Make would be the right way to go. All three of these tools have a completely free plan. You don't have to pay anything. You can get started again as of today. So Zapier is best for, again, non-technical people. You don't have to worry about hosting. It's automatically done on the app. They manage that for you. And you're priced per task. On Make, it's best for visual branching workflows. It's very budget friendly. Again, you don't have to host or do anything weird there. It is fully on the cloud. And pricing wise, for Make, you're actually paying per operation. And let's go back to N8N. So control and cost at volume, essentially. It's best for technical teams who want full control. And now this is one of the big variations. We actually self-host it. What does that mean? That means we go on a platform like GoDaddy or Hostinger or HostGator or one of these platforms, and we host all of our information, and we can have it in a database, and we can have it all neat, and we can have it all clean. I would recommend this if you have at least one person working in specifically tech, and as you can have much more control here, right? And it's open source, which means it's constantly growing within the community. Lastly, lesson 5, the headcount question. This is the one people don't like to say out loud. So let's ask, does building a tool or building more automations or implementing more AI mean cutting people? And here's the reframe. The fear is that automations replace people, or tools replace people. The reality is automation doesn't replace anyone. It actually does filtering, and it lets people actually take judgment. So automations or tools will always be better for objective purposes. When a task is go into the CRM and create a new contact, that is objective. There's no opinion there. And then people will be better for subjective roles. So for example, I can give a candidate a score using AI, and I can tell it specifically what parameters I want to use. And so it's objective because it knows exactly what we're looking for. But the person, the recruiter that is coming in afterwards, is the person that will say this fits specifically the role I am hiring for. You want to have a neat balance of essentially both of those. You never want to go full automations and full AI or full human, because it's never going to be the most efficient balance. The goal is to catch the noise so it never reaches your team. Your people only see the things that actually need a decision, and that's how it should be. You don't cut roles. What we're doing is we're deleting busy work. And so, an example. Here's what it looked like for us before we automated and implemented a bunch of AI and tools. Our sales team at the beginning was roughly 10 people. After we started making the sales flow and we implemented also a hiring flow and all of these things, It was roughly 10 people. We didn't cut anyone. What changed is the output that these 10 people produced. We took the data entry, the follow-up, and the busy work off of their plates, and we gave them their hours back to spend on the stuff that actually closes deals. They can now do more sales calls. They can spend more time contacting clients and actually do the job that pushes the needle, right? So same amount of seats, but more output. And that's exactly what tech or automations or tools and AI is aiming to solve. So that's the whole point. Automation isn't about fewer people. It's actually about freeing the people you have to do the work that matters and therefore increase the bottom line. To start wrapping the call up, if you do nothing else this week, do this one thing, please. Pick one workflow that's eating the most time on your team, map out the steps, and then ship a rough version. You can use Zapier, Make, N8N. You can use any platform. It's all interconnected. They're all new person friendly. They're all no code, which means you don't have to know how to program. The first version should be AI assisted. Honestly, that would be my recommendation. It doesn't have to be pretty. That's not the important part. But you'll learn more from one flow you actually shipped than 10 to 20 to 30 that were just thoughts or planned out. So that's the session. Thank you for spending time with me. I really hope it gave you a clear place to start. We're gonna now open it up to any questions that anyone has. Please drop them in the chat or whatever's easiest for you. I'd love to be of assistance to anyone I can.
That was great. Thank you, Karim. By the way, I look at our business and at its scale today, there would be no way we would be able to service as many clients and help as many people had we not had these automations. Like if you're running a tiny business, a small business, right? It's a startup. Maybe this would not be the biggest focus for you, right? But as soon as you start to get some scale, steps just eat up a lot of your time and your team's time. And so you have two options. One option is you can keep hiring more and more and more people to do these steps, or just try to automate as much as possible. And the nice thing about automating is that you also have, very high reliability, meaning the task will get done exactly the way you've automated. There's a little bit of a learning curve at first, but it's very simple. I'm not a technical guy like Karim was mentioning earlier, and I was able to figure out a lot of basic things that got us going. And so for a lot of business owners, I think this is one of the best things they could implement. It's a little more advanced, which is why you see usually people less interested in this sort of stuff, but in my opinion, extremely important if you're focused on operations.
I completely agree. That was one of the things that kind of baffled me when I joined. Your capacity to solve these issues, like in this new day and age with the tools at your hand. I'm going to kind of go through two of the questions I saw in the chat Jackie made. I know Stephen was helping resolve this, but I'm going to kind of go back through them. So who should own, manage the workflow? VA, an ops person, a developer? That really depends on, I think, the size of your company, Jackie, and where you're at. Would you need to hire a specific automation specialist to start setting these up? No, you can start off of one good technical member on your team. I do recommend this to someone that has tasks that are more related to anything that is data or IT support, or looking at automations or workflows will be much easier for a person like that. So someone with a high logical capability, maybe someone with that studied something related to that, right? That would be my recommendation. Number two, how much does it cost to run an AI workflow at scale? So it depends on the scale. We're talking less than cents on the dollar in some occasions. So it depends on the model size. If we're talking about some of the Claude Opus models, like the newer ones, they're very expensive. For 1 million model context, I think they're $10, $20, something like that. So very, very expensive because you can get through 1 million tokens very quickly. But you don't have to start using this. Like, again, to make reference to what I was saying, start with these very simple models, because the things you're going to be automating most of the time aren't going to be, hey, please build me architecture for a building. It's going to be, hey, decide if this person is a good lead or a bad lead. Hey, can you give me a score on this? Hey, what can or specific prompts that are objective again. So I would start with very small models. My recommendation, which is what we've had great results with, ChatGPT 4.0 Mini. So there's a lot of ChatGPT 4s, but 4.0 Mini specifically costs 16 to 17 times less than using something like 4.0, which is still an old and still a cheap model. So it's actually very, very economic. When does this get expensive? When you start making multiple calls, when you start using multiple prompts, when you're doing maybe an inefficient setup. So we had a setup where every time we looked through a specific candidate, we would have to run a prompt. And for every single prompt, we'd run this. And at some point, we've reached hundreds of thousands of candidates, right? And if you're making this run onto a database because you want to store information, it's going to be an issue because you're syncing. And that means you're going to go through every single candidate again and run that on every single candidate. And so if you run that 100,000 times, it doesn't matter if it's 0.0012 cents, it's going to get very expensive very quickly. So I'd always watch out for that kind of stuff. At the beginning, it won't be difficult. I'm assuming it's going to be smaller tasks. It really does get most heavy when you're dealing with data-related syncs and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not 100% sure. I think this will be uploaded to YouTube, Jackie, but the marketing team can confirm about the recording. Okay, beautiful. I'd love to hear any other questions, even thoughts on anything that was presented, any questions that can help you guys get started tomorrow. Again, my recommendation would be that everyone sit down, look at their company. What are the issues that are costing you money, costing you time at the moment, and then analyze, are these underlying issues or are these actually the issue? And then from there, building out what you think, but not what you think, what needs to be built out, and then defining urgency on each of these tasks to get started. Don't start too big, start small. You'll get there in time. And if you start too big, you're going to get full very quickly and not be able to finish the whole cake. So if there is no more questions, I'd like to thank everyone for joining and for staying throughout the webinar. I hope this was informative to everyone here. And if you ever have any specific questions about automations or all these kinds of things, you can reach me at karim@remoteleverage.com. I'd love to help every single one of you.
Thank you, Karim. This was great.